Welcome back to Visions Equals Reality. I'm your host, Derek Lynn, founder, CEO of Visions Equals Reality. On this show, we interview leaders of organizations to tell their story of how they turn their visions into reality. Once again, we have another special guest, so sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey, Derek, how are you?
Hey, Tim, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Hey, welcome
Turn
to
the volume up here.
All right. Well, welcome to Visions Equals Reality platform. And again, thanks for joining me.
Anytime.
Right. So, Tim, one of the things before we get started, can you mind telling the viewers a little bit about Tim Higham?
Yeah, the last name's pronounced Higham, Higham.
Higham.
Higham. Yeah,
I
high.
apologize.
Like
Hi-
like a high mountain, or like what you can do in 18 states right now is get high. So Higham.
you're you're right. I like that. Higham. Okay, thank you. Can you tell the viewers a little bit about Tim Higham?
Yeah, so I'm from the UK. Came over to the United States when I was 21. I'm 53 now, so I've been in the United States longer than I was in England. I got a degree in mathematical economics, and decided, like a lot of my friends actually, that they were going to go farther afield. A lot of them headed to Europe. They went to Spain, France, Germany, um, in order to try to find a career for themselves. And I came to the US, quite simply because I'd been to school here. My dad's an engineer, and
Right.
so I went to school here in the ninth grade, Carolina, and I loved America. And everybody was super friendly here. And I discovered very early on that my accent helped me. People would remember who I was. And
Right.
so when I finished university, I decided I was gonna, head back to the U.S. I was fortunate because I already had a green card because of my dad's profession, and I've never left. I've been here ever since.
Great, outstanding. So, Tim, one of the things I like to do, I know you're a very successful entrepreneur. One of the things I like to do is kind of look back at where the entrepreneur path began. I had a chance to do a little, history on you, tracking on some of your track record, and I can say very impressive, Tim. I really like it. So, looking back in the 1990s, you was recognized for revolutionizing the insurance industry. Can you tell me a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So what happened is, when I first came to the U.S., I went into the insurance business. It's a long story, but my mother, I used to write computer games when I was a kid. So this is back in 1981. I had a Sinclair Electronics ZX81, which had literally 1K of memory. So I could type
Wow.
1,024 characters until I ran out of memory. And
Wow.
yeah, and so me and my friends, used to actually program in machine code, which is small because how much bang for the buck. There was no translation needed. So my mother said, and we wrote several successful games. This is back in the day when games came on tape cassettes, and you'd put the tape cassette in and press
Right.
play, and yeah, and hook it up to your TV and your computer. And the market was just booming for games at the time. And but my mother always said, look, this whole computer thing's a fad, and you
Right.
need to get a real job. And to her, that was become a doctor or an accountant, going banking. And I'm not a big fan of blood, so I didn't want to become a doctor. And
Right.
and so I decided that I'd go business. Um, my sister works for a big bank in London, still there to this day, and she took the banking route. She's a CPA, and so I got this gig in Lloyd's of London, which basically got me over to America, and I took all the qualifications. By definition, I'm a chartered property casualty underwriter, CPC. It's like being a CPA for insurance.
Got it.
And you take 10 examinations. The examinations are offered only twice a year. Most people take on average 6 years to get all 10 examinations passed, and then you have the CPCU designation. I hated insurance so much, I took all 10 examinations in just 2 years. I didn't,
Whoa.
and after I became qualified, I left the insurance business. I
Whoa.
hated it.
Right.
But one thing that I did learn was that, um, at the time there was this brand new thing called the internet. Apparently, it was invented by Al Gore.
Absolutely.
But the internet and this web browser, and because I was now qualified in insurance, I realized that a lot of the insurance agents were, if you walked into a typical insurance agency and you said, I'd like a quote for my car or for my home, they would literally log into 5 different systems, all green screen, and they would type your name and your address and your car information, time. It was a waste of time it was. So so we were the first ones to, maybe not the first, I don't know, but we were the first ones that I know of that took this new interface called a web browser, and you'd only type, your name in and your address, etc., one time, and then we would shoot the information off to the 5 different green screen systems, and then we would get the results back for the insurance agent so they could see the quotes on one screen. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and it took off like wildfire, and we raised some money through an investor, a very wealthy guy in North Carolina, a guy called
Outstanding.
Cameron Harris, and we sold that company literally 3 years later for 28 point. It's all board that bought us was publicly traded, and that was my first real success where I realized you can take a really paper intensive industry and you can transform it into something that's very digital and saves everybody time and money if you can execute where the pain points are.
Absolutely. Very impressive, I'll tell you. So fast forward, 1998, you sold the company, transitioned into the logistics transportation field. And I'll tell you, there's a quote that says you merge old school thinking to new school technology. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why did they give that quote?
Yeah, every every time a piece of paper passes from one person to another,
Right.
there's an opportunity there, right? And the opportunity is to somehow make it more efficient. So the easiest way to make something really efficient is to pass it off to somebody really quickly. That's the easiest way. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Pass
but
the
you can only
bulk, right?
but you can only
Right.
pass that paper, so fast. And so in the olden days, just 20 years ago, really before email was really well used, people would still use mail, and then regular mail became overnight mail because it got paperwork there faster, and then overnight mail, transitioned to email, and everybody was around. So and faxing was relatively slow, so email was a lot faster because it was, the digitization, wasn't broken. A fax, you were just printing paper out on the other end.
Right.
So I realized very quickly that if you could digitize an existing process, that you would have lots of cheerleaders, people wanting to take that process and use it themselves.
Right.
But it's not as easy as just you can't just take a digital process and say, there you go, digital process. What you've got to do, what's the most important thing, and the biggest problem I see a lot of other people in the industry doing is, and this is because they just don't understand this business. And
Right.
what they're doing is they're the future, not solving today's problems. And what you've got to do, you've got to create a bridge between today's completely screwed up, messy, still very paper driven world, and you've
Right.
got to bridge that world into the future. And if you
Right.
don't bridge the two worlds, then you're not going to have a successful system. Building a system that's going to be, great 10 years from now doesn't
Right.
help anybody. Those companies are already going bankrupt. I see it, every day. And the reason these digital companies are going bankrupt is everybody looks at it and goes, well, that's a great idea in 10 years from now, but they're not solving today's problems. And so you have to inch people forward. So you've got to take that old school way of doing things, and you've got to move everybody millimeter or a centimeter or an inch at a time. But you do enough inches and you've got a yard, and you've got enough yards and you've got enough miles. So it's a slow process.
Right. There's a book I was reading. I think it's Move the Cheese. Who moved the cheese? One
Yeah,
of
who
the
moved the cheese? Yeah.
right, and one of the things it was talking about, is those small little steps, right? That you take, right? Small little steps over time becomes, a solution to whatever problem. But baby changes, right? Just small steps at
Absolutely.
a time. And you said it right, right? A lot of them are trying to solve the problem for the future and not really the problem for today. Right.
Yeah, and these old, they don't seem to focus on, to me, what's the most important thing, which is profit, right? So
Right.
they go raise 10, 20, $100 million, whatever it is, and I'm seeing it happen right now. And then they hire a bunch of people, and when they hire the people they're hiring, they way overpay because they're so desperate. They've got these investors now breathing down their neck, so they hire people and pay 50%, maybe 100% more than they should, and they don't really, they're hiring so fast, there's no real good hiring mechanism in place, so you get some bad apples in the crowd, and these companies are losing money, they're bleeding money so quickly that the CEO and the moment money, they have to start thinking about raising more money because they know that that money they just raised will only last them a year, maybe 3 years tops. And so what happens is these startup companies end up with no leadership because the leaders, all they're doing is constantly looking for more funding. And every
Right.
time they get more funding, if they get more funding, they dilute themselves. So the company that they used to own 100% of, now they've got 60% of, and now they've got 40% and 20% and 5%. And I've
Wow.
seen situations where some of these companies that have raised several rounds of financing, and there's some well-known examples of this. And I think it's just because I'm a little bit, older and wiser through this,
Right.
and so I see that some of these companies that have been around for 5, 6, 7 years and they've done five or so rounds of financing, at the end of the day, some of these owners only own 1 or 2% of the company that they founded.
Right.
So when the company eventually does exit, these poor people aren't making millions and millions of dollars. They're making just enough, to pay off, maybe their mortgage. But they started a company that's just sold, for $1 billion or $100 million or whatever that number is, and they are left with just, essentially crumbs uh,
Wow.
because there's just they've got diluted to death.
Right. So really, what it sounds like to me, Tim, you're saying they didn't really have a strategy going into it when they did it. It's just doing just day by day, not really methodically thinking it through.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they don't, I think some of them just don't get good counsel.
Right.
They don't get good information from friends and family. Of course, the people that are giving them the money, they are, saying, oh, this is great. He take our 20 million, and it sounds great, but uh, because it's never happened to them before. And so rather
Right.
than go get counsel from somebody that can give them really good advice, they take the money and they give half the company away. And
Right.
then they run out of money again a year or two later, and half the again keep going.
Right.
I have one of our Ascend TMS users recently just is in the process right now of selling his company, and he came to me and said, "Hey, I've got these different offers. What should I do?" And I've been quite happy to counsel the guy and to help him because at the end of the day, I want him to do really well,
Be
and the deal's
successful.
about to close. Absolutely.
Right. And before I jump into my next question, I mean, it's kind of segment into the next questions. Now, most of what you're talking about is mentorship. Um, Tim, how important as an entrepreneur, someone that's as a new entrepreneur getting into an entrepreneurship, to kind of find an entrepreneur and I mean, I'm sorry, a mentorship. And one of the things I've been told that mentorship doesn't necessarily have to be in the line of field that you're currently in. It can be a mentorship from a different field. But how important is that as an entrepreneur to kind of get someone as a more, senior in business to kind of have up under their belt to kind of bounce ideas off?
Well, so I think that it's important to have a mentor that doesn't have any conflict of interest. There's no skin in the game. So as soon as you get a mentor that will profit from the things that he's telling you to do or she's telling you to do, then that's not a mentor. That's somebody that's doing something for profit.
Right.
So I try to mentor people as much as I can. I've already made my money in my I put Target. Look, I live in a beautiful house on the water, but I still shop at Target and Walmart. And in my lifetime, I will never spend the money I've made. So I'm quite happy to mentor people and to help people because
Right.
I feel good doing that. I think it's the right thing to do. Um, as soon as an entrepreneur gets to a point where they've made enough money, they should help other people. I mean, the reason I'm doing this today with you is that you started this new podcast. You asked me on LinkedIn very
Right.
politely if I'd help you out, and so
Right.
I said yes. The only thing I've got here is just a little bit of my time, and
Right.
I'm trying to help you out, to succeed. And so I think
Absolutely.
that I think that everybody that does succeed, we have an obligation to help others. And if we do that, then to me, rather than make another $1 million, I'd rather find people that I can help them make $1 million. They don't need to make 20 million or 100 million. I just want them to have enough money. They don't have to worry about their bills anymore. Um,
Absolutely.
I tell people, look, if you're lucky enough to make $5 million in your life, never risk that 5 million for say 50 million. And if you're lucky enough to make 50 million, never risk that to make 500 million because the guy with 500 million, he owns his own corporate jet. The guy with 50 million, he might own say a 60 of that. With 5 million, he uses a NetJets card, and he, basically flies on the corporate jet, whenever he wants to, by basically leasing it for that trip. But at the end of the day, all of those people, whether it's 5 million, 50 million, or 500 million, they all fly on the same bloody corporate jet. So
Right.
the lifestyle afforded, whether you've got 5 million, 50 million, or 500 million, isn't that different. So I tell people, make enough money to be happy and not worry about your bills, and then go on vacation and treat your family members. And, that's what life should be about, and that's why we should all work to afford us that type of lifestyle.
Absolutely. I really like that, and appreciate that tidbit. Um, so fast forward, co-founder of Ascend TMS, president, CEO. How did Ascend TMS come about?
So, I owned a reasonably large brokerage operation, and as part of that, we had trucks as well. Many brokers have trucks. They have sometimes one truck parked behind their, building because they want to be asset based, right? When you
Right.
call somebody, you say, "Oh, yes, we have assets." Yeah, well, it's a
Absolutely.
1968 Freightliner out the back. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So we had a small fleet, and we took money on over the long story short, but we sold it, and I exited that in about 5 years ago, 2015. And so, but as part of that, we'd written our own technology. I was a computer guy, don't forget, and I got into the trucking business and brokerage by complete accident. So, so because I understood the business, I'd written all the software that ran that operation. So when I decided to exit, I actually acquired the intellectual property for the TMS that we have today, Ascend. And I basically took two of the guys that were with me for a long time at the brokerage, and I said, "Look, are you chance on acquire the intellectual property for Ascend?" And I see it's called In Motion Global. The name of the holding company is In Motion Global, and the
Right.
product is called Ascend. So
Right.
I said, I've acquired the intellectual property. I'm going to put $500,000 into this. We're going to get a little tiny office, as cheap as we can get, and the three of us are going to have ownership. I had the majority of the ownership because I put the money in, and I said, I'll give you X% each, but you don't have to put any money in. The only thing you have to do is take a chance. And they both said yes, absolutely. And so in approximately 3 years, we'd moved 4 times, growing. And we spent the first 9 months on January the 1st of 2015. We spent 9 months building the Ascend product, the very early version of Ascend. And then it was sometime I think it was in August, late August, we actually did a soft launch, and we didn't do any marketing at all. We just put it out there on the internet, thefreetms.com. And within 6 hours, we got the first account was created. Um,
Nice.
and then, like 4 hours later, the second account, and then 3 hours later, the next account. And it just snowballed from there. And we kept adding more features. We kept moving into bigger office space. Um, 70,000 that I put into the company that never went down below $273,000. So we drew down that 500,000 to 273, and then we started making money, and then that number started going back up again. And today we have millions of dollars in the bank. Today we average one new account created every hour of every day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and we've got paying customers in over 20 countries today. We've got over 34,000 companies in the United States that use Ascend TMS to run their brokerage, their shipping operations, or their carrier asset operations. And to grow how Ascend started, and it's been a really good journey for us.
Absolutely. Very good. And congratulations with that.
Thank you.
Segment into that, Tim. I noticed you said, you kind of took a chance. One of the things I think a myth that, entrepreneurs, doesn't realize that as an entrepreneur, you have to take risk, right? I mean, you have to be willing to take a chance. You have to be willing to make sacrifice. What advice, or what can you speak on that about taking a chance as someone that maybe looking to get in entrepreneurship and kind of hesitating or really don't want to take a chance? What advice or what can you speak on that for taking a chance as an entrepreneur, stepping out?
So, yeah, first of all, I'd say that people have to ask themselves honestly, am I an entrepreneur? So, being an entrepreneur is not easy. Entrepreneurs
Absolutely.
are, in my opinion, are made. Born. Sorry, they're not made. You can make a rough entrepreneur, like a diamond. You can polish one and make them a better entrepreneur. But I think that to be an entrepreneur, you've got this like urge inside you. It's hard to explain unless you have it, which is, I see things all around me every day that I could do better. And I joke all the time, if only I was a CEO of the world, things would be so much better. Just anything from, just dumb stuff like shopping carts or, the tree guy, when he's cutting trees down, I'm thinking, why does he do it this way? So there's an urge that you have inside you just to make things better, to make them easier, faster, more efficient, cheaper. And so I think you've got to ask yourself, do you have that spark inside you? Because you can ask my wife. Sometimes I'll get up at 4:30 in the morning. Why? Because I wake up at 4 and I start thinking about a business thing or an idea. And that's it. I'm done. I cannot go back to sleep again. So I'll quietly sneak out the bedroom and I come down to my office and I work. Yes, 8 p.m. Bed at 8 p.m. because of that. But
Right.
but the idea comes to you and you have to get up and act upon it. So I think the first thing is ask yourself, am I an entrepreneur, or am I somebody that's good at managing, which is a whole different, a whole different skill set. Because if you're just good at managing, you can work for a company and be a manager and clock off at 5 p.m. and you can still do very well and make good money. But being an entrepreneur is 24/7. You don't start, thinking about things. And so you've just got to have that mental capacity. And then the only other big advice I would say to entrepreneurs or to the potential business people is don't take on too much risk. Risk is something that you have to take on risk, but you want to mitigate that risk to as little as possible. So, would I jump off a cliff, without a parachute? No, because that's a lot of risk. There is a chance, a really small chance, that I might hit a bunch of trees going down at just
Right.
the right angle that I would survive. But that's a
Right.
lot of risk. Now, I would get a lot of fame for that. I'd be very famous, but am I willing to take on the risk for that fame? The answer is no, right?
Right.
So, so you've got to say to yourself, if you have $10,000 saved in your bank for 5 years, do you want to risk all of that on an idea that may or may not work? Probably not. You might want to try 1,000 or 2,000 of that money, to try something out. And so, how do you save money? Don't go buy new furniture. Beg, borrow, and steal. Use old PCs. Everybody's got old IKEA furniture in the garage they're not using.
Absolutely.
Don't get a big beautiful office, because if you've got a company today, many people won't visit your office. You don't need to be spending $25 or $30 a square foot for office. You can work from home or work from your garage. Google started in the garage. Some of the biggest started in Ascend. When we started, our office was a nice office, but it overlooked a cow pasture. So I'd open the back door and there was cows outside. Is that a bad thing? I thought that was a plus. I got to see cows rather than some big city. And so
Right.
yeah, so and it was only 800 square feet, but there was only three of us. I didn't need to have a big building. So I
Right.
think don't take on too much risk. If you think of those two things, ask yourself if you're an entrepreneur, and if you are, don't overdo the risk part. You have a good chance of succeeding.
Right. And talking about that, Tim, there was a poll that you did. It was talking about, starting small, growing big, right? Start small, before you think about growing big, and just steadily pace yourself. Is that a good idea that you would recommend someone entrepreneur that, like you say, that's, want to get a business and thinking about, hey, I need to get this big, office? No, like you said, start small, grow big.
Well, and that's ego, right? So
Right.
people have an ego. So when you're at some trade show or with family, and they say, "Oh, so Stark, how big is your company?" Everybody wants to say, "Oh, well, we have 4,000 people." Hey, that sounds really good, but that's not really the right question, is it? What the
Right.
right question is, hey, Stark, how much money is your company profitable? So, the would you rather have a 4,000 person company that's losing, say, 20 million a month, or would you rather have a 10-person company that's making $30,000 a month? You pick one. I know which one I choose. You know,
Absolutely.
I'd rather have the one that's profitable and small, because small means
Yes.
less headaches, and you're
Yes.
making, $300,000-400,000 a year for yourself. That to me is success. So never risk that never risk your $30,000 by adding more and more and more people, because the more people you get, the more headaches you'll have, and the more likely you are going to be not profitable. And I see it today with a lot of these companies on LinkedIn, they're taking VC money. They're all bleeding money. Very, very few of them are making any money whatsoever. Never mind consistently, even 1 month in the year. And so if you're losing, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I was losing 2, 3, 5 million a month, and I've only got 20 million in the bank. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And
Right.
so, the way I look at this is you've got to look at what's important, temper your need for your ego to take over, to get some big glass office building overlooking Manhattan with 4,000 people, overlook a cow pasture with 10 people, and make $30,000 a month. And you have the American dream because you're making $300,000 to $400,000 a year in Steric's pocket.
Absolutely. So Tim, when we talk about setbacks and struggles, right? Because as an entrepreneur, every entrepreneur will go through that phase in their entrepreneurship where man, they're just hitting up against the wall, nothing's working, or man, I'm just seeing like every time today is a grind, right? Any advice or any some mentorship in that level for us, um, to kind of help them overcome that hump?
Stuff will always go wrong. So we have a company, that's extremely with every week something happens. I mean, I can go on and on, about the little things that happen, but it's if you problems never get easier with age, right? So if you ignore some kind of issue or some kind of problem, that problem will become bigger. It's like it'll just fester. So the best thing you can do is take a problem head on the moment it happens and continuously course correct. So it's like sailing. If you're in a sailing boat and you're 1 degree off your course and you ignore that 1 degree for a month, by the time you where you are now, you'll realize that you're 1,000 miles away from the island you were trying to sail to. Why? Because it was only 1 degree off a month ago, but that 1 degree gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So if
Right.
you ignore that, you are so far off your goal. So what you have to do is have to course correct all the time. And if you course correct, you'll find that what would have been a big problem becomes a small problem, and you get very good very quickly at making fast adjustments, whether that's an employee, whether it's office or contract dispute, whatever it is, fix it fast because it will not get better with age.
Absolutely. And, I've incorporated that in my trucking business. One of the things that I do, fixed costs, variable costs, they say always know your fixed costs and your variable costs. And you have to do that on a daily, weekly, and sometimes a monthly basis because it can change, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
absolutely.
So in that case, I see people, where they look at all the miles they run, their revenue generating miles, and say, oh, we're doing well, but why did we lose money? So, the question is though, look at your deadhead. If you're doing a lot of deadhead between stops, yeah, the loads you're doing, you might be making money on, but if your deadhead is over 6 or 7%, you're going to take all that money that you made and you're just going to basically set fire to it. So you've got to look at the little things. It's the deadhead. It's the truck, trucks, and you're going to a place that's charging you 20% more just for oil changes. That's a lot of money in a month. And so I think that if you look at all the little tiny areas where you can save a dime or a nickel, they all add up. And over a year, I mean, once a year, I did a post on LinkedIn not long ago. Every year we sit down and we look at our entire P&L and our credit card statements. And for years now, we've never failed to save somewhere between $120,000 a year in savings just by looking at all the stuff we buy and finding pennies here and nickels there, dimes to save, changing our coffee supplier or our water supplier, our internet things. It all adds up over time. So, if you're very careful about the small things, then the big things will take care of themselves.
Uh, Absolutely right. Capture those small things, and small things can save you for those big things. I like that.
Yep.
Couple more questions, Tim. So when we talk about what keeps you going through those hard times, a lot of folks have quotes. Myself, normally what I do, I kind of keep my eyes, which is on the prize, which is my end goal of where I want to go. Right. I think all of us should have goals as an entrepreneur. Is there routine, daily routine that that you kind of stick by every day, like a morning routine or whatsoever?
No, not really. Some people, swear by going to these organizational courses or, planning courses. That's just not me.
Right.
I'm constantly thinking about things all the time. And so, my guys, they'll get emails from me sometimes at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, um, or at 11 o'clock at night. But that affords me the ability to, if my wife wants to go shopping on a Tuesday afternoon, for something, I can go do that. Right. So,
So,
that's one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur. Um,
absolutely.
so I don't, yeah, I don't really have, a special, but because when you're an entrepreneur, you literally are on 24/7. I mean,
Absolutely.
365 a year.
Absolutely.
Um, so I think there's a little bit, you know, don't spend lots of money going to, Tony Robbins, classes, woo class, and it's all cheer together and hold hands. You
Right.
know, they're
Right.
just a waste of money. You might feel good for a few hours when you're around all these other people, but if you feel you've got to go to those courses, in my opinion, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs don't need to go to those courses to be motivated,
Right.
um, and yeah, things will go wrong. But like I said, keep course correcting, and you'll do fine. And I guess one sidebar to that question is virtually no staff turnover at all, none. And we probably pay our staff 20 or 30% more than the market rate.
Right.
So I've realized many decades ago, if you find really good people and you pay them a little bit over market, they will work their butts off for you. They work really hard and they don't leave, because when people leave, you've now got to untangle the mess of them leaving. You've got to find somebody else to come take over that role. Whoever
Right.
comes in takes at least a month or two to get up to speed. So you're losing productivity with a new person coming in. So isn't it easier just to spend 20 or 30% more on people and have those people feel like you care about them? And if you do that and they don't leave, you become more efficient. And if you're more efficient, then you can spend more time shopping with your wife.
Right. Absolutely. That makes sense, Tim. That definitely makes sense. Um, one more question. Books. Is there a particular book you're currently reading now?
So it's funny. I used to read books all the time, and I don't as much anymore because today's,
Right.
it's all about sound bites, YouTube, unlimited documentaries. But if there's one book that I think, if anybody, is stupid enough to listen to this entire diatribe I've just given,
Oh,
one
it's
book,
great.
there's one book that changed my life, and if you buy it and read it and don't like it, send me an email and I'll send you the money for the book back. So whoever's listening to this, if they buy this book and don't like it, I'll send them the $10 for the book. So I don't think anybody will do that, but I'm quite happy to. And
Right.
it's called the E Myth. And the E Myth is this. So in real simple terms, it says that a lot of people make the mistake that, and it's a short book. A lot of people make the mistake that they work at a company and they say to themselves, "Man, I'm doing all the hard work here, and I'm working my butt off and coming in early and leaving late, and my boss man is making all the money." They, I'm going to start my own company. So, but most people fall into three categories of people. You're either an entrepreneur, like that I am, which is basically a salesperson. You want to sell things and market. You're or you're a manager type person where you want to manage and organize things, or you're a technologist, somebody that likes to tinker with technology and you don't really want to do selling. You don't want to do managing. You just like to you be with your machines, right? So most of us fall into those three categories. Some of us, have skills, where we can do a little bit of selling and we understand computers, but that's kind of rare, right? That's like a person that can play the guitar, the drums. Talks about you have to be smart enough to recognize what you are. So I am an entrepreneur. I'm a great salesperson. I'm a great marketeer. I am not a good manager. My head's all over the place. I'm not a good operator, right? Um, and I am a good technologist, but I'm not, I don't write code anymore. So I've got to recognize the fact that code has come a long way, in that 30, 40 years since I started writing code. So, so I'm really good at being an entrepreneur. So I surrounded myself, the two guys that I originally took with me to start Ascend, one of them is my COO to this day, Chief Operating Officer, an amazing operator, runs things like Justin Heath. He's the technologist. And Justin, doesn't really care for the operational side or the selling side, but he loves his machines and he's so good at it. The three of us are like three legs on a stool. I'm, the sales leg. Chris is the operation leg, and Justin is the leg that's holding up the other side of the stool, the technology. And that stool stays firm and it's really, really steady. The moment you take one of those away, the stool falls over. So you've got to recognize, like, Steric, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to recognize if you're going to truly succeed, you need to say, good at, I'm not a operator, I need to get a good operator, or I'm not a great technologist, I'm going to get a good technology person. And if you do that, the three legs of the stool will hold up and you'll have a very successful company. So it's called the E-myth, and it means the entrepreneurial myth. So, like if Justin, my CTO, was to go start his own company, it would fail in a month. And he would tell you that. Why? Because he would build an amazing product, but nobody would buy it or even hear about it because he's just not a good salesperson or a marketeer. So you've got to recognize what you're good at.
Great. I really like that the E-myth. I will get that book. Absolutely.
And I'll give you the $10 back if you don't like it.
No, well, trust me, I love reading. That's one thing I've learned as an entrepreneur. You have to always continue to learn and educate yourself, right? And what's the best bet in books or, getting mentorship? So Tim, how can the viewers get in contact with you or your company if they would like to, look at Ascend TMS?
Yeah. So if you just go to thefreetms.com, if you want to reach me, the easiest way to reach me is just go to our contact page, and there's like an info. You can just type in who you are and a question, and I'm on that group. Where that'll go to our sales and marketing team, but it also comes to me. So if you say, hey, this is for Tim, free team, go to the contact area, enter whatever question or anything you have, and that'll get to me. And for your viewers, if you're interested in the TMS, everybody gets 30 days free. Mention my name and we'll give you a shipper directory of 26,000 shippers, including all their credit scores. So if you do decide to use Ascend, I'll throw that in. It's usually, you can buy that same directory for $2,500. So for your viewers, if they're interested in getting the TMS, we give 30 days free of Ascend to anybody that's watching this. And I will throw in the shipper directory for free. They just got to mention my name. When they get the account, they just need to say,
absolutely. There you go, viewers. Tim, once again, thank you for joining Vision Reality Platform. I enjoyed the interview. We hope we can do this again in the future.
Great. Thanks, Derek. I appreciate you. Be
Thank
safe
you.
out there.
You too now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, what a great interview with Tim. I tell you, I hope all of you enjoyed it just as much as I did. What a revolutionary. Those that want to get in entrepreneurship or even have a thought of wanting to do a career change, watch this video. I think it'll really give you a lot of good tips on how to be successful as an entrepreneur. Once again, stay tuned, hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me again. See you at the next episode.